Hi, I'm Mohsen, and I'm so excited to welcome you to The Seeking Soul. This podcast is a space where we explore topics like philosophy, spirituality, and literature, often from perspectives you may not have encountered before. As someone who grew up traveling, I've had the privilege of witnessing the deep similarities between cultures and people, even when mainstream narratives focus on what divides us. As an Iranian American, I've always felt to share the beauty, wisdom, and lessons from my Eastern heritage with my Western community, and vice versa. My hope is to be a bridge between these two worlds, fostering the sense of oneness and unity. With the help of AI, this dream feels more achievable than ever. Using documents and notes, I've provided with the link of the sources in the description. Along the way, you might encounter ideas that feel new, challenging, or even uncomfortable, and that's okay. That's the purpose of this space, to listen with empathy and approach every perspective with love and curiosity. Welcome to the Seeking Soul. Hello, friends. I am finally back after a couple of months of pause. I mentioned it in previous episodes that I'll be having some life change events happening, which I am now officially a father. And as some of you might know already, that as a first-time father, the world revolves around a little one. So I had to take some time off, enjoy my time with him, and get the hang of this new lifestyle. I've been finally able to find some time and get back to this podcast, and hopefully you can follow along again. For this episode, I was very interested in introducing you to a great Iranian scholar, philosopher, intellectual, and Islamic theologist. His name is Muhammad Taqi Ja'fari. He was born in 1923 in Iran. He graduated from elementary studies in Tabriz and continued his education in a seminary. Muhammad Taqi Ja'fari never studied in any universities. However, due to his delicate mental endeavors, he created invaluable amounts of knowledge, particularly in fields of such as philosophy, anthropology, ideology, and modern truth. Interestingly, many Western scholars and thinkers from prominent universities all over the world visited him and held talks and discussions with him. Over 100 major interviews, some of which have been published. Mr. Ja'fari and Bertrand Russell had correspondence with each other, Professor Rosenthal, Dr. Kenneth Allen Luther, Dr. Alan Alfasi, Professor Genkowski, Professor Van Es, Professor Kuroda, Professor Muhammad Abdul Salam, and many others were among the people that came to Tehran to hold discussions with them. I invite you to listen to this podcast, and I hope you enjoy it. Once again, if you do like this podcast, please hit that subscribe button and follow for more. Thank you and enjoy.
Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever felt that modern life, for all its information, leaves you craving something deeper, those genuine aha moments about what it all means? Today, we're diving deep into some truly remarkable source material, the profound insights of the late Allama Muhammad Taqi Ja'fari, particularly from his seminal work, The Mystery of Life.
What's fascinating here is that Ja'fari, a renowned Iranian philosopher and scholar, wasn't just another academic. He had this unique, expansive approach, pulling together insights not just from philosophy, but from humanities, experimental sciences like physics and mathematics. He was trying to open up entirely new ways to understand the very essence of existence. This deep dive is all about extracting those essential nuggets, helping you see truths from a surprising new scope.
Absolutely. Our mission today is to explore Ja'fari's expansive vision, from how we even begin to perceive reality to the ultimate purpose of our existence and how we can achieve what he calls intelligible life. You'll quickly see he wasn't confined by geographical boundaries or any single discipline. His main concern was always mankind and the future of human flourishing. So let's start with the man himself, Muhammad Taqi Ja'fari. These sources introduce him as an internationally renowned thinker, especially in the latter half of his life. He brought an incredibly innovative perspective, moving beyond the traditional confines of pure philosophy. He delved into the very basics of how we recognize and discover anything, how we approach science, and the core of philosophy itself. But he wasn't content with just analysis. Ja'fari was on a unique quest to open new paths to understanding by drawing from diverse fields like the humanities and even hard sciences such as physics and mathematics. At the heart of his work was the mystery of life, exploring how culture evolves and the hidden secrets within education. He saw life not as a static state, but as an ongoing elevation.
And that concept of elevation leads him directly to what he considers a fundamentally crucial domain: intelligible life. His overarching goal, as we see in these texts, was to extract profound, constructive truth from what he called obvious realities, things we encounter every day in culture, economics, science, history, philosophy, civilizations, technology. He believed this was absolutely vital to save the world from what he termed unbalanced thinking.
Yeah.
The sources consistently highlight his meticulous care, his intellectual vigor, and his passion in analyzing complex, unsolved issues from both Western and Eastern thought. This is never a narrow academic exercise for him. Ja'fari's outlook was truly global. It wasn't constrained by any single cultural or geographic perspective. His primary concern was always the welfare and future of humanity. He uses this beautiful, almost poetic analogy, describing his work as the cry of a thoughtful bird who sees the entire world as a garden, a place to develop, to fly, and to soar higher and higher. Wow. And he makes a very powerful statement. You simply cannot solve the true mystery of life without making it face eternity.
That's a profound starting point. But if we're trying to understand intelligible life, we first have to ask, how do we even know anything? Here's where it gets really interesting, because Ja'fari delves into the very tools we use for discovery, and he starts right where we do. Our senses. Our natural senses are our first point of contact with the world, giving us raw data. But he makes a crucial point. The phenomena that enter our minds through our senses don't necessarily remain exactly as they are outside.
Right.
For instance, the actual chemical molecules of a smell aren't literally inside us. Our nerves just transmit a message. Even more profoundly, our internal factors, our desires, our existing knowledge, our emotions, heavily interpret that sensory input. Think about seeing a dead body. If it's a friend, you feel sorrow. If it's an enemy, it might evoke delight. The external fact is the same, but our internal state completely shifts our perception, so our senses are filters, not just windows.
Exactly. And this filtering and interpretation extends even when we use advanced tools. Artificial devices like telescopes and microscopes dramatically extend our sensory reach, but they don't remove the role of our internal conditions or our fundamental senses. He highlights what physicists like Max Planck and Hermann von Helmholtz observed, that scientific measurements are always somewhat uncertain messages. They're like a linguist trying to decipher an ancient, partially damaged document. To make sense of it, you have to believe there's an underlying logic, or that the real world follows laws we may not fully fathom.
So there's always an element of belief and interpretation, even in hard science.
Absolutely.
So if our senses and even our scientific tools have these inherent filters, what else does Ja'fari say influences how we perceive truth? He moves beyond the purely empirical here, pointing to some surprising factors in recognition. He identifies moral ethics as one of the most important and most dignified factors in gaining knowledge. This isn't just about being a good person. It's about how activating our highest human aspects, living a life aligned with a higher purpose, actually allows truth to flourish for us. For Ja'fari, gaining knowledge isn't just about accumulating facts. It becomes a means to perfection and an expansion of our very identity. And then, quite remarkably, he speaks of the arousal of love. Love, as a motive for discovery, can also lead to knowledge. He says that when love is the driving force, one might see facts as inherently beautiful, even sometimes ignoring what might seem like purely logical reasoning in that pursuit. How do you see those moral and emotional factors playing a role?
It's truly insightful. It highlights that knowledge isn't just a cold intellectual process. It's not just data crunching.
Right.
This brings us to the distinction between different levels of understanding. Ja'fari talks about indirect understanding, which is when we learn about something through its connections to other phenomena. For instance, we understand color through the presence of light or the distance of an object. Contrast that with direct understanding, often found in empirical sciences, where you try to analyze a subject somewhat independently. But even then, he warns, it might not capture the whole identity because everything is interconnected.
Right, nothing exists in total isolation.
Exactly. Then he introduces direct grasp, which implies an all-around understanding, really knowing something from every angle, though he admits this is often limited to very specific, narrow scientific fields.
Like a specialist knowing their tiny area perfectly.
Kind of, yeah. And finally, indirect grasp, where we understand an effect by knowing its cause, but this is always colored by our prior knowledge, like how looking at a bright light temporarily changes your perception of other colors. It's a reminder that our perception is always layered.
That makes a lot of sense, that our existing knowledge and even our moral compass shapes what we see. So what does this all mean for how we learn and grow? Ja'fari presents various forms of knowledge, each with its own unique characteristics. He contrasts purely educational knowledge, which he describes as an absolutely reflective process. Think of it as passively absorbing information like rote memorization.
Just taking it in.
Yeah. The risks, he points out, include confusion from conflicting ideas and a weakening of our own mental productivity. But then there's purely developmental knowledge. Here, concepts and realities are inducted into us.
Inducted, so it becomes part of you.
Exactly. If we observe logical principles, the knowledge becomes deeper and longer lasting because it results from a real change, a genuine contact with facts. For example, realizing that honesty genuinely strengthens your character leads to a profound, lasting interest in telling the truth. This emphasizes a practical, transformative kind of knowledge, not just abstract facts.
Precisely. And this focus on practical development is crucial because certain forms of knowledge, especially misapplied, can be risky. Ja'fari warns about supposed knowledge, which is based on no observable evidence, relying purely on mental conditions or concepts.
Just ideas floating around.
Pretty much. Similarly, theoretical knowledge might align with some research, but can't be fully tested experimentally. The real danger, he argues, comes when we mix these suppositions and theories with scientific laws, especially in the humanities. While less harmful in the natural sciences, he warns that applying such unsubstantiated theories to human culture can cause irreparable harm, citing certain historical theories that he believes inhibited human evolution.
Wow.
Then there's purely descriptive knowledge, which aims to describe facts exhaustively from all viewpoints. While it tries to be a bridge to true recognition, its sheer exhaustiveness can paradoxically make initial direct knowledge seem unnecessary, leading to stagnant human thought.
It's like getting lost in the weeds.
Exactly, getting lost in the details rather than grasping the essence.
That's a powerful point. Sometimes too much description can prevent true understanding. But Ja'fari also introduces us to less common, yet incredibly powerful forms of knowledge. One is worship-based knowledge.
Worship-based, how does that work?
This involves issues where the full reason or rationale isn't entirely known to us, yet they still hold profound reasons. For instance, the rules of worshiping God. While their full rationales might be beyond immediate human comprehension, they adjust our relationship with God through their intelligible contents.
Okay, I see. It's about the relationship itself.
Right. Then there's intuitive knowledge, which he describes as a direct contact between man's inside and facts non-observable to his senses.
Like a gut feeling, but deeper.
Sort of, yeah. This intuition, he says, casts light on the subject itself, offering a clarity far superior to his sensory sight or his intelligence. It's an immediate, profound grasp. And finally, he speaks of what he calls the supreme forms of knowledge. These aren't supernatural in a way that defies logic, but rather are gained by purifying his inside of desires and wishes. Essentially, freeing oneself from selfishness.
Getting rid of the ego's interference.
Exactly. He says these forms are all-around dominant knowledge, an internal light that arises from direct contact with reality.
And this internal light leads to a particular kind of wonder. Ja'fari distinguishes between two types of amazement. There's a negative static amazement, which can lead to mental stalemate and doubt, almost like being overwhelmed and shutting down.
Just being stuck in awe, maybe?
Yeah, or confusion. But then there's dynamic, positive amazement. This is a powerful force for discovery, filled with feelings of greatness and attraction toward issues that are far beyond formal science's laws and principles.
So it spurs you on.
It does. It's so profound that he recalls the Holy Prophet's prayer to God for increased amazement, because this form is far superior to all sciences and knowledge. It's an active, inspiring wonder that pushes you to explore more.
Wow. So how does our mind actually process all this incoming information, both sensory and these more profound forms of knowledge? Ja'fari reveals the complex activities of the mind and the crucial, often dynamic relationship between our own self and everything other than ourselves. He breaks down mental activities into categories like confirmation, where our imaginations and speculations are related. For example, the idea that the sun is spherical is a mental construction. Then there's abstraction, where we omit characteristics of an identity. When we say man is a talking animal, each word is an abstracted concept, leaving out specific observable qualities.
Taking out the specifics.
Right. We also use analysis, breaking things down into components, and combination, collecting those components and discovering how they interrelate. He mentions Bertrand Russell's idea of logical atomism, that everything can be broken down into its smallest, simplest parts.
Taking the watch apart.
Exactly. While Ja'fari agrees analysis is vital, he insists we also need the combination piece, putting those pieces back together to see how they interrelate in the larger picture. It's like taking a watch apart, but then also knowing how to reassemble it to understand how it actually works.
That analogy of the watch is perfect because it highlights that recognition, for Ja'fari, truly rests on two fundamental pillars. The self, which is the innate pole or the recognizer, and other than the self, which encompasses all observable facts of the universe, the target of discovery.
Self and other.
And critically, these two pillars mutually influence each other. When we look at the factors influencing the self, we see several elements. There's the ego or personality, which manages all our cognitive factors. A disorder here can significantly influence our scientific outcomes. Think of Rumi's poetry. If something distressing happens, the whole world can appear miserable to you. If you're happy, it's like paradise. Our brain factors, imagination, memory, thought, the subconscious, intuition, and revelations all play an active role, shaping our knowledge and viewpoints. Our natural senses are limited channels, and any change in their structure affects our knowledge. And finally, secondary effects, like illnesses, can literally alter perception, making you see everything in a particular color.
It's like we each have our own unique set of lenses. That reminds me of the famous story Rumi tells of the elephant in the dark, where each blind person describes it differently based on the part they touch. The ear, the leg, the trunk.
Exactly.
Each is partially correct, but none grasps the whole.
Precisely. Max Planck, in a Western context, echoed this, believing that while physicists idealize discovering the real world, measurements are merely doubtful messages, and we must, in essence, believe the universe follows laws we cannot fathom.
Still a mystery, then.
Always an element of mystery, yes. This underscores the ongoing mystery and the subjective element. On the other than the self side, we have realities discovered for their own sake, the tools for gaining knowledge, and transit objects like light. What's powerful is that the more mental development the human ego achieves, the less dependent it becomes on external factors and tools for its discoveries.
So we grow inwardly.
It points to an incredible internal capacity for deeper understanding. Ja'fari ultimately posits a harmony in cognition, where the mind and facts behave equally, like how our eyes always see large objects small from a distance, or fan blades appear circular when rotating. He concludes that while a purely scientific approach is crucial for revealing facts, it is not the only way, and that spiritual witnessing of facts can lead to the discovery of thousands of secrets.
That's a huge takeaway. It's not just about what science tells us, but this raises an important question. Why do we seek knowledge in the first place? And what is the ultimate aim of life, especially in Ja'fari's profound concept of intelligible life?
Well, he explains that the fundamental drive is rooted in self-love, or the need for self-preservation, which leads to a clear relationship with facts.
Okay.
This manifests in various ways. The desire to expand our dominance over nature, the sheer enjoyment of discovery, or even practical advantages like wealth or fame. But then there's the fifth, and perhaps most profound factor, spiritual flourish and elevation through establishing contact with the truth.
Ah, that elevation again.
Exactly. He notes that historically this spiritual factor and the eagerness for discovery were more dominant, but in modern times the focus has shifted towards governing nature.
Right, controlling the world around us.
This drive for knowledge, then, connects deeply to the search for meaning. Ja'fari identifies several motivations for asking about the aim of life. Some can be negative, stemming from despair or stagnation.
Feeling lost?
Yeah. Others are positive, arising when we realize the artificiality of a purely natural life. And then there are consequential motives, where failing to achieve ideals can lead to nihilism. True inquiry, however, transcends these superficial concerns, pushing us to move beyond a purely material-driven life. For Ja'fari, recognizing life's ultimate aim is an absolute necessity.
We need to know why we're here.
He insists that creation is not aimless. The universe is orderly, righteous, and serious, moving toward a final destination that cannot be lower than its current stages. That ultimate destination, he argues, is God. The Qur'anic view of life's aim, as he presents it, echoes this. Creation is not in vain, but rather embodies objective righteousness and is not a mere plaything.
Not just chance.
No, it consistently moves toward its final destination, God, and explicitly states that worship is the ultimate aim. As one verse puts it, my prayers, worship, and death are at the will of God, the creator of the universe.
That's a powerful framework. And Ja'fari contrasts two fundamental ways of living that emerge from this understanding, offering humanity a crucial choice. First, there's purely natural life. He describes this as animal-like, essentially a battle for survival focused solely on fulfilling natural desires.
Just eat, sleep, survive.
Basically. The consequences, he warns, are dire. It leads to stupefaction replacing consciousness, the destruction of positive forms of love, conflicts between power and righteousness, self-bestrangedness, a rise in nihilism, and tragically, increasing suicide.
Oh, wow.
It's a life consumed by worldly needs, where humanity's positive aspects are entirely forgotten. It sounds like a pretty bleak outcome.
It is, and that's why he champions the alternative, intelligible life. This is defined as a conscious life that deliberately guides human natural forces and activities toward evolutionary goals by means of more freedom of choice.
Consciously choosing a higher path.
Exactly. It means gradually developing the human character, allowing all positive potentials to flourish, and replacing petty, short-sighted interests with greater, more valuable ones. In an intelligible life, one is being guided toward the highest end of life by actively connecting to divine greatness and participating in universal harmony. It's about aligning your individual existence with the larger purpose of creation.
So how does this concept of intelligible life actually play out in the practical aspects of our world? How does it transform our common human endeavors, like science or art?
It fundamentally redefines them. For example, science and intelligible life isn't used to inflate our natural ego or dominate others, but rather as a means to advance toward evolutionary goals. It's controlled by wisdom and conscience, guided by God, and seen as a divine ray of light.
A tool for good, essentially.
Yes. Similarly, arts and intelligible life are pursued not as art for art's sake, just for beauty or entertainment, but as art for the sake of humanity. It aims to depict facts as they are and as they should be, guiding man toward freedom and development, acting as a wave of intelligible life that reinforces consciousness and perfection.
Art with a purpose beyond just aesthetics.
Precisely. And this extends to how we structure society. Politics in intelligible life becomes a management system aimed at achieving the highest of physical and spiritual goals for everyone. It focuses on creating awareness and developing true freedom, driven by a relief from self-love and a continual search for life's highest aim. This is in stark contrast to Machiavellian politics, which focuses on self-interest in degrading people.
Big difference there.
Huge. For economy and intelligible life, resources serve to safeguard and preserve the whole of human life, promoting social justice and fulfilling real needs. Rather than merely inflating the natural self or enriching a selfish minority, it emphasizes shared blessings.
Sharing the wealth, basically.
In a way, yes, ensuring everyone's needs are met. And finally, education in intelligible life reinforces deep cognition and understanding of original facts, motivating a gradual shift from purely natural to intelligible life. It activates human virtues like honesty and justice, with teachers needing to embody what they teach, continuously develop, be devoted, and seek God's help. Is a holistic view.
That paints a powerful picture of a society built on deeper principles. But let's dig deeper into the core of who we are. What is human nature, and how does it relate to our freedom and our place in society from Ja'fari's perspective? He addresses the debates around human nature, defining it as the natural, orderly flow of the forces inside man. He argues that our very inventions and discoveries are evidence of our internal potentials, not just products of external factors.
It comes from within.
Right. He acknowledges that humans possess both incredible virtues and a capacity for corruption. However, he clarifies that we cannot activate conflicting potentials simultaneously. We can't truly be righteous and selfishly cruel at the same time. Furthermore, he emphasizes that our inherent potentials are purely positive, constructive, and it is humanity that abuses them. He believes our nature is fundamentally non-physical and supernaturally united, allowing for the complex interplay of our varied potentials.
This leads him to a crucial duality within the self. Ja'fari identifies two identities for the human self. One is the static or pleasure-seeking self, which tends toward hedonism, misleads from righteousness, denies harmony, and regards itself as the ultimate end, treating others merely as means.
The selfish self.
Basically, yeah. This path, he warns, ultimately leads to self-alienation. The other is the dynamic self, progressing toward perfection. This form is always elevating, never selfish or arrogant, and knows that true perfection is only possible outside the confines of the natural pleasure-seeking self.
So this self-alienation sounds like a pretty common modern malady. Is he suggesting we're often living with an unreal self?
Absolutely. He states that this ignorance about the self has engulfed most of humanity today. It can manifest as a bargain-like self-alienation where individuals essentially trade their true self for profit or external gain.
Selling out, kind of.
You could put it that way. Or it could be living with an unreal self, ignoring their deeper potentials and pursuing baseless desires. But the evolution of the self, as he describes it, is a liberating process, leading to greater independence, the activation of potentials, internal freedom, and a profound consideration for eternal prosperity. Our weaknesses, he explains, often root in dependence on external realities and emergent ignorance. As Rumi notes, springs and autumns rise and fall in us as our mental states fluctuate. These can be overcome by strengthening thought and establishing contact with God.
Given these internal dynamics, how do we navigate our relationships with others in society? Ja'fari acknowledges that human differences exist, distinguishing between natural differences like talents, intelligence, and sensory perception.
Things we're born with or develop naturally.
Right. And artificial differences born of opportunism or social classifications. He stresses that society should be structured so that everyone, regardless of these differences, can aim for an intelligible life. He also delves into the concept of conscience, arguing that it's not merely a social construct, it's an internal guide that develops character, differentiates good from evil, feels responsible, and can experience serenity or be tortured.
That inner voice.
Exactly. Fundamentally, he states, the conscience reflects God's words and carries the profound feeling that the self is immortal.
And this complex understanding of the self and human potential leads to a nuanced view of freedom. Ja'fari carefully distinguishes it into three terms: release, free will, and general freedom.
Okay, what's the difference?
Release is simply the elimination of external restrictions, like being freed from exile. Straightforward enough.
Right.
Free will, however, is far more profound.
Yeah.
It's the character's supervision over actions, choosing merit-based selections, specifically for the purpose of achieving perfection, which leads to meritorious deeds.
Choosing the good, the elevating path.
Precisely. General freedom, on the other hand, means one's personality aids in actions, but it doesn't necessarily imply merit-based choices, just acting freely, perhaps without that higher aim. He argues that while elevated freedom, true free will, is more effective, general freedom shouldn't actively block the path to intelligible life.
That's a direct challenge to a very widely accepted idea of freedom in the West. Do whatever you want as long as you don't harm others. Many would argue that's the ultimate liberty. Is Ja'fari saying this view is inherently flawed or just incomplete? And how does he propose we develop that internal control?
He would say it's incomplete. He's very clear that in the name of freedom of belief, we cannot ignore universal facts, because to do so would render life inexplicably futile.
Can't just believe anything if it contradicts reality.
Exactly. And while freedom of thought is commanded by God in the Quran, because if we weren't free to think, God wouldn't order it, this freedom should not lead to complete negligence or hinder mental activity. As for freedom of expression, logical and intelligible expression is acceptable, but unintelligible things have harmful effects. This freedom, he states, false only when it causes disorder in all true human principles and values and misguides minds.
So responsibility comes with freedom.
Yes, especially in humanities, where he feels the supervision of learned experts is essential, as commenting without knowledge can be damaging. He critically examines the Western definition of freedom of behavior. Do whatever you want, just don't bother anyone.
The classic libertarian idea.
Right. He argues that human desires don't always obey wisdom, and a lack of internal control invariably leads to crime. For him, true freedom isn't the absence of limits, but the internal mastery that allows one to choose what truly elevates.
Internal mastery. Okay, so let's tie these insights into how societies are built and sustained. Ja'fari had a lot to say about work. For him, work has two aspects: its value as a means producing results, and its value as a topic, meaning it's inherently valuable beyond just its products.
Work itself is dignity.
Yes. It requires conscious intention and useful results. He categorizes the domains of work value. In the purely economic domain, the focus is solely on observable effects like usefulness and demand, often ignoring human values.
Just the bottom line.
Pretty much. The socioeconomic domain is more humane but still limited by an absolutely free individual view. But the most profound is the human economic domain, tied to intelligible life. Here, work and economy serve man's real needs and social justice, rather than just inflating the natural self or enriching the selfish minority. It emphasizes sharing financial blessings to improve others' lives, not selfish accumulation.
More just economy.
This also connects to personal ownership, which he sees rooted in our tendency to gain authority and freedom for an intelligible life. However, ownership is limited by God's creation, which is for all, and by individual effort. It's a powerful paradox, isn't it? Ja'fari warns that if we make accumulating wealth or possessions our ultimate goal, we actually become enslaved to them.
Right, the things you own end up owning you?
Exactly. It's like working tirelessly just to maintain your big house. When that work keeps you from what truly matters in life, the very things we seek for freedom can become our cages.
Indeed. And for unity in society, Ja'fari believes arts, especially literature, can pave the path by motivating people's feelings. He stresses that true unity requires disregarding anti-human thoughts from figures like Machiavelli, Hobbes, Nietzsche, and Freud.
Those who emphasize conflict or ego.
Exactly. He uses Rumi's mountain analogy. This world is like a mountain, and our actions, like the shouting toward that mountain, they are echoed back to us to illustrate how our actions and reactions can foster unity. What you put out comes back.
Karma, in a sense.
In a way. Regarding religious unity, Ja'fari distinguishes it from absolute unity, which he says is impossible due to human diversity and freedom of thought. He also distinguishes it from unity caused by external elements, which he sees as baseless and temporary. Instead, he advocates for intelligible unity, which involves believing in the general context of Abraham's religion for all societies, and actively removing illogical prejudices and individual theoretical beliefs.
Finding common ground in core principles.
That's the idea. The foundation of social order and cooperation, for Ja'fari, rests on religious, moral, political, and legal principles. He emphasizes that moral ethics are key for the voluntary observance of laws.
Okay, so we've covered the mind and our goals in life and how they apply to society. Now let's zoom in on the human experience itself specifically, how we relate to each other as men and women, and then the foundational idea of God, especially as Ja'fari unpacks it through the Qur'an. He maintains that women possess an inner greatness, and they shouldn't compare themselves to men, but rather recognize their distinctive aspects. He emphasizes the profound significance of the family for the fate of a society, stating that both men and women must consider it.
A family unit is key.
Very much so. He acknowledges that while there is diversity within each gender, for example, comparing Avicenna's intelligence to others, the core dignities are equal. He delves into the term qavam, overseer-maintainer, as used in Quran 4.34. He carefully clarifies that this term does not mean legal custody, but rather management and carrying out what is to the benefit of the family, and this role is based on man's resistance against the ups and downs of life.
So responsibility, not a domination.
Exactly. Crucially, he states this calls for consultation within the family, not absolute dictatorship, for the flourishing of all family members. As for certain interpretations of the Quran regarding specific disciplinary actions, he stresses that any act of physical harm is explicitly a crime, and any unsolved issues should be brought to a judge. He emphasizes that such interpretations refer to symbolic warnings, not physical injury.
It's important to understand that when Ja'fari discusses certain historical Islamic texts, like the Nahj al-Balagha, a foundational collection of sermons, letters, and sayings by Imam Ali, a central figure in Islamic thought, he's always aiming to clarify potential misinterpretations.
Getting the context right.
Yes. For example, some discussions refer to imperfect faith or imperfect intelligence for women. Ja'fari clarifies that imperfect faith refers to physical limitations like menstruation preventing prayer or fasting during certain periods, not a spiritual flaw in their connection with God. They can still maintain that connection.
A practical matter, not a spiritual one.
Right. As for imperfect intelligence, he argues this is not a value-based imperfection. Intellectual activity involves choosing means to goals, and while men and women may have different strengths in specific areas, women are absolutely capable of complete educational and developmental factors and can elevate their raw emotions to supreme ones even better than men. His overall conclusion is that these texts refer to superficial differences or specific historical contexts, not fundamental character differences, affirming the equality of inherent dignity.
That clarification is really important. Now let's explore the deepest belief, God. The history of belief in God, he argues, is probably as old as mankind itself, rooted in supernatural tendencies and prayers.
It's ancient.
Right. He acknowledges past errors like idolatry, but refutes the idea that monotheism didn't exist historically. He believes the reasoning for God's existence is inherently understood by sound minds. He argues that the concept of God is a being that needs no cause, as self-evident as 2 by 2 4.
Almost intuitively obvious to a clear mind.
That's the idea.
This self-evident truth about God leads to a powerful definition of faith. It is the confirmation of an active conscience. It's not merely intellectual assent, but something that actively leads to action.
Knowing isn't enough, you have to act on it.
Exactly. Knowing justice is necessary, for example, is different from actually executing it. The effects of faith are profound. It leads to a feeling of greatness in the universe, a constant observation of moral principles, an ongoing awareness of God's supervision, and a deep devotion that prompts one to make savings for his eternity.
Thinking beyond this life.
Yes. Ja'fari critically assesses the Western view of religion as a purely personal matter. He argues that religion answers fundamental questions like, who am I? Where have I come from? Where do I go from here? Why am I here?
The big questions.
The biggest. Separating religion from life leads to nervous and spiritual retardation.
So he's saying if we cut off that search for ultimate meaning, we actually stunt our own growth.
Precisely. He identifies the origins of defying divine commandments as ignorance, neglect toward God due to desires, and an illusion of independence. He then distinguishes between general devotion to things like power or wealth, which he says does not develop character, and value-based devotion to God, which makes all potentials flourish, purifies relations, brings tranquility, and defeats opposition.
Devotion to something higher.
Right. This devotion, he stresses, affects one's thoughts, deeds, and speech. Constantly having God in mind leads to a spiritual state that safeguards one from materialism, makes life meaningful, purifies man, frees him from illusions, and leads to knowing God's blessings. It's described as the strongest builder of human nature.
That brings us to another foundational concept for Ja'fari, human rights. He insists they should be based on innate greatness and generosity, a foundation he argues is often lacking in Western philosophies like Nietzsche's or authoritarianism.
He's a solid basis.
Yes. He asserts that Islam bases human rights on God, seeing all humanity as God's family. He acknowledges the Western view of human rights, which often bases itself on identifying virtues and equal rights, and uses terms like family of mankind. However, he points out that this ideal is often unfulfilled due to a lack of elevated virtues, and that concepts like freedom from poverty or fear are merely means, not ultimate ends.
Good starting points, but not the whole picture.
Right. In contrast, the Islamic view of human rights holds that the life and death of one person is equal to that of all mankind, as expressed in Quran 5.32.
Yeah.
All humans are considered members of one big family, sharing common rights to life, dignity, work, and education. He highlights key differences between Islamic and Western human rights. Islam sees life as God's blessing, prohibiting self-harm, whereas the Western view doesn't explicitly. Islam sees innate dignity as God-given, providing a logical explanation, while the Western view, he argues, often lacks this. Furthermore, Islam prioritizes mental and spiritual education in its rights framework.
A different emphasis.
So if God is at the center of this, how does Ja'fari approach the ultimate source of Islamic philosophy, the Quran itself?
He describes the Quran as light, guidance, cure, a blessing, a letter from the Creator. It's a book that helps us become real human beings and rise to divinity, revealing truths about a meaningful man and universe. He calls it a tongue that will never become silent because humanity's serious questions about life will never end. He emphasizes that it's not a book made by limited human brains, thus ensuring it won't decline or fall silent.
Timeless wisdom.
That's the claim. Knowing the Quran, therefore, is essential for curing mental and spiritual problems and creating vigor. It's about understanding our perfection-loving soul and the domains of what there is and what there should be. He clarifies that it's not a scientific book in a limited sense, but rather requires deep study, not just merely reading words. He posits that Islam is Abraham's religion, presenting a general context of a divine religion for all.
That makes sense. It's not a science textbook, but a guide to understanding ourselves and our purpose. What about the concept of mysticism, and how does art fit into this grand vision?
Ja'fari delves into mysticism, asserting that it leads to the highest, most divine of all possible pleasures, and getting closer to God by purifying the soul. He defines positive mysticism as the expansion and divine domination of the human self over the universe, aimed at being absorbed by absolute perfection, ultimately leading to contact with God.
Expanding the self towards the divine.
Right. Crucially, this positive mysticism cannot be selfish. It demands responsibility and care for others, as true human perfection requires recognizing and addressing the needs of fellow beings. He outlines mysticism's four relationships: with oneself, transforming the natural self; with God, cleansing the natural self; with the universe; and with fellow beings, recognizing their needs.
The complete reorientation.
Yes. He also explains mystic change as a dynamic process where knowledge leads to action, which in turn leads to new knowledge, with both eventually finding supreme unity.
Knowledge and action becoming one.
That's the goal.
And how does art fit into all of this? Ja'fari presents two viewpoints: art for art's sake versus art for man's sake. Art for art's sake focuses on the artist's genius and entertainment without concern for consequences. It simply aims to be appealing. In contrast, pioneer art, or art for man's sake in an intelligible life, refines reality, guiding humanity towards an intelligible life.
Art as a guide.
Exactly. It purifies illusions and motivates evolutionary development, creating works that are not just appealing, but act as a wave of intelligible life. He notes that modernism in art is valuable when it arises from a desire for serious mental and psychological freedom in man's four relationships with God, himself, the universe, and other human beings.
If it serves that higher purpose.
Right. Ultimately, he defines beauty as the recorded effect of perfection. He highlights that not all physical things are beautiful. Our internal feelings and spirit play a significant role in appreciating beauty. Moreover, he points out the existence of intellectual beauties like justice and freedom, which, unlike observable beauties that can fade, remain perpetually attractive. Ja'fari truly gives us a powerful framework for seeing life as an elevation, a path towards something profoundly meaningful.
Indeed. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Ja'fari consistently encourages us to move beyond superficiality. Whether discussing scientific laws, human nature, or societal structures, his core message is about seeking the constructive truth that leads to an intelligible life, one where our actions align with a higher purpose and where we truly understand ourselves and our place in the universe. This raises an important question. How might your understanding of intelligible life shift your perception of daily challenges, turning obstacles into stepping stones on your own path of elevation?
A fantastic thought to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep flying higher.